This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. Choice, but Gary was trying to stifle Mark in his mirth.
I know. I was having such a good time. Yeah, we were just discussing the temperature here, and Adam was talking about the fact that you were in the ocean very recently.
I was, about an hour ago. And then
I was saying, I'm on. One of the great things I love about Twitter is you can kind of curate your feed to get the people you want to follow. And there's a couple of guys I follow who believe, as you do, in the cold dunk experience. And I was just telling Adam that I used to at the LA Athletic Club, they had a cold dunk pool, and I used to jump into the cold dunk pool. And then Adam said, well, you should try the pool and knock me out. I said, yeah, that's a great idea. And then Adam just coolly said, no, you'll never do it.
Well, couple things. I've been in the cold dunk pool they've had at some of those clubs, which is fine, but it's a little rough. Like it is, the sauna, you're good. The jacuzzi, you're good. Naked. When you go for the cold dunk pool, where's my trunks?
Yeah,
you got to put the trunks on because it's tough getting out of the cold dunk pool in a public setting. The pool, look, we live as the crow flies 2/3 of a mile away from one another, maybe closer.
Maybe closer if you just, as the crow flies, I say as the horse shits, because as you're going down the trail. If
you pulled a string from your pool to my pool, it would be, less than 700 yards.
Right.
And so thus it's the same temperature.
Right.
And I can tell you that, and Drew didn't want to do this either, but Drew got into it, and then he came down with COVID, and I think he's been out for a while. But you get up in the morning and you dunk yourself in that pool. It is a game changer. Now,
well, I will tell you something else about La Cañada. We are so low to the water level that it is literally 15 degrees cooler there. I mean, when you get out of your house and then you drive to the freeway where the 2 is, there's about a 12-degree change. It's unbelievable.
It is painful, and especially during the winter months. And that's the point. See, everyone always wants to talk about the physiological benefits. I don't know about the physiological benefits. I hear there are physiological benefits. That's
what I'm telling you. That's the guys that I follow are telling me there is.
I'm saying there's an emotional benefit. And that emotional benefit is you got to get up every morning and you have to break yourself. That's essentially, you discipline yourself. You stare out the window, rain or shine. You'll look at the indoor temp, and for the outdoor, I have a digital thing. It'll say like 49 degrees outside, and then I'll hit the pool water one. I'll say 48 degrees in the pool, and I go, all right, this is going to be miserable. Here we go.
How long do you jump in?
I do the exact same ritual every time. It is walk in. First, it's check and see if my daughter's in the kitchen because the window goes right out to the pool, and I always do it on natural.
So the last thing you want to do is frighten her at that tender, impressionable age.
Yeah. Yes, I do not want to scar her any more than she's already been scarred. So take a look.
She's hardly scarred, by the way.
Yes, I know. She could use a little scarring.
I was going to say she's grown into herself incredibly. Tenny, and I watched at Christmas Tenny and her and Elizabeth, who was the little cousin, and it's quite a thing to see these 10-year leaps between them.
Yeah, well, she is a kind of a young Tenny. Your daughter, obviously, is so dynamic. Walk down into the shallow end, walk down the steps. The key is do not stop. When you stop, you start thinking about things, and that's your enemy. So you walk down the steps. You take a couple of steps in the shallow end, and then just push yourself in and do the breaststroke across to the deep end.
Okay.
Then you hang out in the deep end.
You hang out?
Hang out for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. You just sit there, your head's above water, and you try to get even. You try to kind of regulate yourself,
Right.
acclimate, just kind of acclimate. You don't want to turn it into a Chinese fire drill. You sit there, then deep breath down to the drain. That's the tough part. You have to touch the drain.
Okay.
Then you have to skim along the bottom. There's 2 other weird sort of supplemental drain things or something. And I skim along the bottom, touch those 2, and then pop up at the stairs and the shallow end, and now you can do what you want. You can get out.
Wow.
Now the whole.
Do you have a towel?
Oh yeah, the whole thing round trip.
Yeah. It's how long?
It's got to be 50, 80 seconds max. Like it is literally. It's literally a minute, and the problem with it being literally a minute is you can't being in your bathrobe and slippers inside the house looking out the window going, I don't got time for this. I got to get into work today. Like you don't have time for it. It is a 90-second round trip. That's the problem. So you get that part.
Now I feel bad. Now, is there any reason, because my ritual is walk to the place where I do the morning exercises, then walk, go, stop, get coffee. Then can I come back and do the cold dunk?
I have found
that it's got to be first thing.
No, it does.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be first thing. But I would implement this simple rule. The simple rule is you must do it before you move on to other things.
Oh,
now
wait, is that because you won't do it?
You know from your profession that the second you start walking down that trail or stopping at the coffee shop, you could get hit by a dump truck.
Right.
And then you would die, not have made yourself miserable or frozen yourself in your swimming pool. No, I'll tell you what happens. I'll tell you the most miserable I'll ever be with that is 3-5 times a year, I got to catch a flight out of LAX at 7 a.m., which means I need to be on the road at 5:20,
right.
Which means I got to get up at 4:45, which means it's dark outside.
Right. And it's never good for your rhythm.
And I went to bed at midnight, and it's drizzling. And it's the last thing I want to do is walk out there. But those are the rules. I have to go to the airport. I got to do it. So but the rules are if it's a Saturday and you got nothing going on and you're putzing around and you're watching a little college football, I won't get in till noon or 1 o'clock.
Oh,
the rule is you got to do it before you get dressed.
Oh.
See,
How about this?
The problem
Can
with
you do it before you shower?
Yes. Well,
okay.
I've eliminated the shower because I've now used this as my shower. So, but
go in sopping wet.
The problem with the walk and the exercise and the coffee is then when you're walking back and boring cop calls you,
right?
And he goes, Cap's out of control. He's on the roof of our building. He's throwing furniture at police off the edge. And then you go, okay, all right, hold on, give me 10 minutes. And you run and you go right past the pool. You're done. Because here's the deal. The pool is so freezing and so miserable, you're looking for any excuse. Any excuse.
To the point where Drew actually got COVID rather than do it anymore.
I believe he did infect himself with COVID because I had him in his pool, which is, equally as miserable as our pool, and he was doing it, and then he came down with the COVID. So, but I talked to him moments ago, and he seems to be doing fine.
I was texting with him last night. He seemed to be back better than if it's 1 to 10. Wouldn't you say he's about a 12 right now?
He is, but his self-esteem is so affected that he keeps thinking he's off or there's something wrong. He's like a hot chick who looks in the mirror and sees a fat woman staring back at her, which I like, by the way. I love that. And people are like, well, why do you like that? Well, what's the opposite? A fat chick
who looks there
and sees a supermodel looking back at her? You want to be married to that? I don't think so. So I like Drew's low self-esteem, and he seems to be recovered just fine. I was at his house, that night, as you know.
I know.
And I got nothing. It's such a bizarre thing. I've traveled the country. I've played every club. I've gone to every restaurant. I've sat at every airport. I've done every single thing they tell you not to do repeatedly throughout the year. And Mike August and Chris Laxamon have been right by my side for all. I got back from Florida. I got back from Florida 4 or 5 days ago.
That's right. You went and you played. I remember that.
Playing packed clubs, flying in airplanes, staying at hotels, going out at night, going out for lunch, going indoors, getting haircuts, just doing everything you cannot do in California all over the country. And a self-selecting group. It's open. It is cities that are open. So you would think, well, they're rolling the dice.
Well, there's two things that have happened this week, and I know everybody wants to talk about Trump getting impeached, but we'll get to that in a sec. The two things that have happened that have been significant this week, and when people ask, why do you guys fixate on this, there's a reason, because it's clearly it has to do with liberty and science, so you want to follow the science. First, they announced that the PCR test, which is one of the common tests, may be giving false positives. And the reason for that is that when you do a PCR test, I have some familiarity with it from DNA analysis and the way that it's used, especially in mitochondrial DNA and things of that nature. They're saying that you should not replicate it as much because it's giving false positive. Meaning, they take a sample and then they, like a copy machine, they guys keep making more copies until they get to a point where they then test it. But what they're saying is that that's giving way too many false positives. That's one thing that came out this week, and now they're dialing back whether the kind of methodology of the PCR test. The other one that came out is there's now been, and this is, you and I have talked about this for months, but now all of a sudden the experts are starting to get are starting to say, wait a second here, we've seen Los Angeles became number one, the hotbed, sometime in November, December. Now California is the epicenter. And now they're speculating, wasn't me that did this article, but it was an article in, of all places, San Francisco Chronicle, where the infectious disease experts are saying outdoor dining is what caused California, the closure of it is what caused California to force people indoors, because you're never going, the idiocy of all of this is that you're never going to force human nature to change. You can put guardrails on it, but nothing else. And so now the speculation is that's what has caused us to become this, literally as we're sitting here, the epicenter of COVID. And Los Angeles was first, California second, and that's, by the way, exactly what happened in terms of the COVID rates. Remember, right. L.A. was first, and then when they closed down outdoor dining, then the governor jumped in after we got the TRO granted and did it for the whole state, and now this is where we are.
Well, it's sort of like this. You say we're going to close down all the barber shops, we're going to close down all the beauty shops and all the salons. You think women aren't going to get their hair done? What they're going to do is they're going to have people come into their house and do their hair at their house. So now you have this situation where...
Or they're going to close down a particular salon for the day and then bring somebody in and have a hidden camera.
Right.
Because people are going to do what people are going to do.
Yes, thank you, Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, so look, I've said it. The same people that are saying, look, you can't close down abortion clinics, people are going to have back alley abortion. You're not going to stop abortions. You're going to force people into dangerous situations. Well, hey, numbnuts, it's the same thing with hair salons.
Identical
You
principle.
shut it down. I would say the average woman has got her hair done way more than she's had abortions. I would say I haven't vetted it. I haven't crunched the numbers. I'm basing it on living with a woman for 20 years. I say there's no way she had 7,000 abortions. But I do know she gets her hair done once or twice a week. And most women do. And guys want to get their haircut. So what happens? Well, you force people into this situation. And what you had in the salon was something that was regulated. They could put up the plexiglass. They could take your temperature. They could space people out. They could have the mask protocols. They could space the chairs out. They could do all the regulated mitigating programs. But when the dude comes to your house or the chick comes to your house, then there is no protocol.
And by the way, when it's bootleg, there's no protocol. It's the same principle.
That's what it is.
And by the way, I won't dime out because it's great places, but all you do, there is indoor dining if you know where to go.
Really?
Yeah. There's, look at Gary shaking his head.
Off the air, man.
Yeah, there is indoor dining, and there are indoor. People are going to do this. It's idiotic. It makes no sense. In fact, the only time we had been able to go for maybe 10 months at the office by spacing everybody and doing we had everything done and we were still working and we were essential, and so that's fine. What ended up happening? They shut outdoor dining, and then next thing I know, one of the people at the office is at she says it was an Uno party, but I think it was just strip poker because they were so bored. And she gets it. She's out for a month, and somebody that she'd associated was out for a month, and there you go. And you say, well, why were you doing that? Well, you say, what are we going to do? We're not going to shut down, everything. It's just not going to happen.
Cannot tell you how crowded. I've been to Vegas. I've been to Phoenix. I've been to Florida. Those places are hopping, and a lot of that traffic is from California. Just
right.
The flight that I took from Vegas back to LAX was a Southwest flight that was 100% full.
Really?
Literally. I heard them calling. Have you heard of Southwest Airline?
Yes, I have. I was an A-plus member or an A member, whatever.
They have an A boarding group,
right.
A B boarding group.
And do you have the card? The little Southwest A card?
No, because I'm scared someone will see it. It'll fall out of my pocket when I'm drunk and I'll be judged, like one of those Ralph Club cards on your keychain.
No, I just memorized my phone number at home, and now I can get my Ralph's discount. They always ask about you at Ralph's, by the way.
I heard C-70. It went up to C-70.
No,
and the point of
C-70 is a full plane.
That absolutely 100%. All right, so where are we at with outdoor dining? And I also want to know where the fuck we're at with schools. I got 14-year-old kids that's just been rotting at home for 10 months.
So the outdoor dining, we filed the federal case yesterday. It's funny, and I hadn't even talked to you, and we expanded it from outdoor dining to also we've got a number of clients who are listed who are beauty salons and nails and the whole bit, because as you said, they're all regulated and it makes no sense, none whatsoever. And by the way, if you're going to follow the science, explain to me why California and why perfectly you can say we shut down outdoor dining in L.A. County, the only county that did it. All of a sudden, L.A. County surges. We then follow up with the state of California shutting down. California surges. And why is that? And the fallback position was, well, it was the holidays, Thanksgiving. Remember the Thanksgiving?
Right.
Then it's, oh, my God, wait for the Christmas New Year's thing. Well, guess what? Now, all of a sudden, maybe it's lagging because we're not seeing the Christmas New Year's problem. Well, duh, because it's astonishing to me. And I'm going to say one more thing while I'm on the soapbox. You're talking about 70% of the deaths, last time I checked, being associated with assisted living facilities, okay? Mm-hmm. That's their statistic. Go onto the website. You look, 68 to 71%, depending on the day. Do you know where we are in vaccination of assisted living facilities?
That's way under 5%.
Yeah. So explain that to me. So if you want to, and mind you, the mortality is still plummeting, and all they want to do is talk about vaccination and rolling it out, and they can't deal with the 65-year-olds, and they can't deal. I don't understand. If this guy, I was as anti-Trump as any human around. I represented Cap, as you famously said. I called him out on it. I was vocal the entire time. I said he was, over his head. I've been a staunch critic of Trump all along. But if you are a staunch critic of Trump, how do you get up in the morning and say that Gavin Newsom, at this point, if you're honest with yourself, how do you say, wow, he's done a really good job with the lockdowns. Wow, he's done a fantastic job on the vaccination rollout, right? He's done a spectacular job on schools, and boy, his leadership and his messaging has been right on point, hasn't it? I mean, just explain to me, because I want somebody to tell me why it is that you can't be a critic of Trump's ineptitude, but somehow you've got to just shut up when it comes to Newsom?
Well, it's basically they're not going to praise Newsom. They're just going to sit there silently and pretend like they didn't vote for this asshole. And that's sort of my thing, which is, where are the voices? How come people aren't pushing back? How come people aren't standing up? If you live in California, the man isn't Trump. The man is Gavin Newsom. You want to push back, dissent is patriotic. That's not Trump. That never was Trump. If you're in California, it's Newsom. That is the guy. They're so busy calling Trump a tyrannical dictator, and he wants to be, Soviet-style takeover and all this stuff. Look no further than Newsom.
Well, and that's why for those of you who tweet at me, this, that, or the other, remember, if I go back and see that you're anti-Newsom and pro-Trump, I've already kind of dismissed you. And if you are anti-Trump and pro-Newsom, it's the same thing. A pox on both your houses. Right. Because you can't sit here and tell me there's no question that the federal government screwed up, to the point where I think there's people who should be criminally liable. But at the same time, Dr. Ghali, who's the state head of HHS, he stated in an interview on December 8th when somebody asked him about outdoor dining. He said, no, we know there's no data on that. We're just trying to get people to stay indoors. Okay, so you try to get people to stay indoors. Do you know what the definition of involuntary manslaughter is? Doing a lawful act which in an unlawful manner. Go read 192 of the Penal Code and see if subsection B does not comport with a gross negligence. That is gross negligence. And now to say we're going to lock down harder, what's one of your most popular tweets of all time?
We have to lock down harder and longer until we can bring our numbers down to cities that never locked down.
Right. And that's
and my favorite one, which someone Matt DeAndrea actually quoted to me the other night, which I forgot all about, but your favorite quote of mine is when someone's calling me a rich asshole, eating out, not caring about money, and little people living in a $7 million house, and I just said 7.3. Back to him.
Get it right.
That's
get it right.
That's Mark's favorite tweet.
It is my favorite tweet. Well, you had a good one this week. One of my favorites is you talked about the pardon range from Steve Bannon to Lil Wayne. I mean, that's some range.
Yeah, I would say we all land somewhere between that. All right, we have a guest, John Lewin. Oh, well, all right. We'll put it on the screen there, Gary. If that's the plan. Want to take a break first? Yeah. All right. Don't give me the sigh.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell with Gary right now with that mask. There's kind of what was the character in Batman?
Oh, that was the
Bane.
Joker.
Was it
Bane?
No,
Oh, Bane.
Bane.
Yeah, the Joker had a
There's
weird
kind of a Bane quality to you today,
yes.
Gary.
Oh, I think I picked up the physical dynamic. You read juries. I read engineering rooms. Gary is looking at intern Ryan and thinking he should have put Bright.
Exactly what I saw. I saw that death stare. That's the only thing that I can see in there is his eyes.
Is that a true statement, Gary?
Very fair.
Very fair. See?
He's new. We're still coaching him up.
All right. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back, and we'll talk to Deputy District Attorney for Major Crimes, John Lewin, right after this. All right, we're back. We're going to continue the shutdown talk because I want to know about schools being closed in California. It's driving me nuts. And we'll get to the Trump impeachment stuff and other legal conversations involving Trump as well. First, John Lewin, Deputy District Attorney, is on Zoom or on the line. Either way, here he is. Good to talk to you again, John.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Well, there you are.
There he is. Hi, John. How are you?
I'm good, Mark. It's been a long time. We had a prelim together probably 25 years ago.
Was it? I have a vague recollection of it. You look the same now, though. I've aged and you haven't. How does that?
You know what? When you're short and fat, the years tend to be kind to you. So
My father always used to say that every woman had to make a choice between her body and her face, and I never understood that. And then I realized that what he was saying is they either get a fat face and no wrinkles or a fat body. So I'll
my poor wife went 0 for 2. So.
But you're going to be sleeping out on the beach.
No, I know. I meant me. I meant me, not her.
Okay.
Deal.
So you want to talk about the William Bradford parole situation?
Sure, Adam. It's gosh, it seems like I've been on this program talking about this before. It's like a bad version of Groundhog Day. So let me just say in advance, obviously I'm appearing today. These are my personal opinions. These opinions in no way reflect the policies or positions of the Los Angeles County.
Do you have do you read that from a teleprompter? Because I hear you guys at the DA's office have got scripts you've got to read now, and you have nothing gives me more joy than when some DA is up there reading a script that he can barely choke out.
Here I am, definitely making clear that these are my personal opinions. I took the day off to be with you guys.
John, you're not head of major crimes, are you?
I am not head of major crimes. I've been in major crimes for a long period of time, but no, I'm a trial lawyer.
Right.
So I am.
You're not like Pat. Were you there when Pat Dixon was there?
Oh yeah, I've been there since 2004.
Wow.
So I worked for Pat for many years.
Pat was the guy that pioneered in the DA's office what do you call it, the fisherman's privilege or whatever?
Fisherman's privilege. Yeah, Pat had his fish up there. That is absolutely true.
What is the definition of a major crime?
That's what major crime. I'll tell you what the outsiders thought. In the defense bar, we always thought major crime was you could cherry pick whichever case would look the most interesting.
Well, so for me, although I'm major crimes, I've been cold cases since I got there. So basically, all that I do are complex, circumstantial cold cases. So I don't know what the definition of crime is, but for me, it's a circumstantial, generally speaking, non-DNA cold case, which is what this was.
I'm trying to remember. Years ago, there was a cold case. I wonder if it was before you. Mura, which was a murder in Little Tokyo, and then the guy was acquitted in Japan, and then he stepped foot in Guam, not knowing that was a U.S. territory. Was that, and then...
Did that guy kill himself?
Yeah, killed himself in the jail. But both guys, when Alan Jackson was on it, and the other guy who, God, he's going to kill me. He's the judge, Rick Ocampo, judge in Compton.
So I was in the unit. I was actually in trial on another cold case. I actually started the work on that case, and then ended up being busy with I can't remember which case I was trying, but Alan and Rick. That was Rick Jackson was the RHC detective. Yeah, right. They ended up going out to Japan, and they got him back here. And then he ended up killing himself.
Well, the irony of that is we did a motion once in jeopardy because we said he was acquitted in Japan on the murder. So you guys I thought it was a pretty smart move. You did a conspiracy and said that's what you were going to bring him here on. And they brought him here. I was in Europe, and I sent one of my associates down to see him, and he was dead 12 hours later. And I hate to speak ill of the dead, but I said the guy killed himself once he saw my associate.
Once he heard about your hourly rate.
Yeah, or maybe that was it. When he heard what the fees were going to be, he said, I'm out of here.
All right, let's talk about the Bradford situation, if we could. Set up the case, please, John.
Sure. So in 1988, William Bradford was an engineer in his mid-50s, very, very well thought of. He worked at Northrop and worked on satellites. He had been going through a very bitter divorce with his wife. They had 3 children. Divorce had started in 84, and Bradford was very controlling. He was somebody who he was going to have the divorce on his terms. And so between 84 and 88, he basically was starving his ex-wife and the children out. And he wasn't paying proper child support. So in 88, the ex-wife goes and gets a judgment for past child support that was due. And the agreement was that he was allowed to pay this money he owed in arrears, about $40,000, at like $150 a month. But if he missed even one payment, she could then get the whole $40,000. So in the midst of this, they're finishing their divorce. They're selling their house. So he gets a call from the real estate agent the day before the murder saying, hey, I have some good news for you. I have a check for your share of the property. There's some bad news, though, because $40,000 of it's gone because your wife's lawyer garnished the $40,000 you owe her. So he's so upset that he doesn't go into work the next day. And he's such a great employee that literally his boss drives to his house, to his apartment, because he believes that he must be dead because he doesn't call into work. So the boss sees him. He's very upset. The boss leaves. And that evening, in a very nice area in Torrance, they call it Christmas Tree Lane, where all the people go with the at Christmas time. It's beautiful down there. It's a beautiful neighborhood. She is basically executed in her home, shot 4 times. The last shot while she's on the ground, not moving, and the second to last shot while she's kind of crawling on the ground. The 16 and the 21-year-old find their mother's body, and they immediately tell the police at the time, well, it's Dad. So they try to find him. They can't locate him. They do a search of his nearby apartment, and they find a gun box for a .357 Magnum. She was killed with a .357 Magnum, and she was killed with 38 caliber Winchester silver tip hollow points. So the detectives try to find him. They can't locate him. It'll turn out that he is sleeping in his car for 2 days at the Redondo Beach Pier, about a mile from his apartment and about a mile from the house. Why is he sleeping at the pier for 2 days? Well, because his ex-wife's husband's lawyer had an office there. And he was basically, we believe, waiting in his car for 2 days because it was going to be a double murder-suicide. The lawyer never ends up coming back to his office. And Bradford goes home on that Sunday, sees the search warrant notification, and ends up going and talking to the police.
Who was the lawyer? Was it in Courtney's office on the end of the pier?
It was Tom Allen.
Yeah, Tom. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Judge. No, his dad was the judge.
His dad was the judge, exactly.
Right. I think Allen Jr. was the judge. I think he was probably Tom Allen III. So Tom was the lawyer,
right?
And so they end up interviewing Bradford.
Who defended Bradford in the trial?
Mark Overland.
Oh, no kidding. Great lawyer.
Yeah. So what happened is that they end up interviewing him, and he denies any involvement, et cetera, and the case kind of dies. So about 14 years later, 12 years later, it's the first cold case that I actually tried.
Why did the case die? I mean, you have seems like some evidence.
The case died, Adam, because I think back then the way that circumstantial cases were looked at is much different.
Totally, not even close, right?
Yeah, not even close. To me, it was an incredibly compelling case, but it was very circumstantial. So we ended up reinvestigating it. We actually didn't get any new evidence, but when we really looked at what we had, we filed the case. Bradford made bail. What
year did you file it?
We filed it in 2001, I believe.
And when was the homicide?
88.
88. Okay.
And we tried it in 2002.
Who'd you try it in front of?
We tried it in front of it was either Mark Arnold or Jim Eidman. I can't remember which, one of the two.
Jim Eidman is one of my favorites. In fact, in Mistrial, my book, one of the chapters I quote him, where Jim Eidman, I tried my first jury trial in front of him in the 80s in CCB, and he was, he would not tolerate any nonsense whatsoever. And he said he then got from Superior Court was named as a federal district court judge and then retired, which is almost unheard of. They usually take senior status. And when somebody asked him and he went back to Superior Court, they said, why? And he said, because being a assistant United States attorney means never saying I'm sorry. And I've never forgotten that.
He had 4 pensions because he retired as a colonel.
Right.
In the Army. He had a Superior Court judge, colonel pension, federal judge, and state court judge. So anyway, I tried the case, and he was convicted. He was very surprised that he was convicted. His lawyer felt that we didn't have much of a case. And the next thing I know, while he's in custody, waiting to be sent away, he's now almost 70 years old. I get called by the Department of Corrections, and they end up telling me that basically Bradford's cellmate has come forward, and he is making arrangements to have me and my family murdered. So at the time, I didn't think that it was necessarily credible, but I heard what the guy had to say. He wasn't asking for anything, and we ended up polygraphing him. He was polygraphed, and 2 of the 3 tests were a clean pass. 1 was inconclusive, and it was pretty chilling.
Let me just stop for a quick second for the lay people. So if you have a cellmate who's talking about something nefarious that his cellmate is potentially up to, if there's let me off 6 months early and I've got some good information for you, then it's like he wants something.
Correct.
So there's a motivating factor.
That's the snitch way of
right.
The snitch
but
way.
Saying he didn't want anything, he was just had information, suggests that the information, there's a higher likelihood that information is accurate when they're not asking for anything, I would say.
100%. And then when he was very agreeable to take a polygraph exam, and what he ended up saying is Bradford had admitted to killing his wife. And this is what's very interesting about Bradford. He told a cellmate he killed his wife, and eventually at the parole hearing, he ended up admitting that he killed his wife. But yet he's got a lot of anger and hostility towards me because he believes that I, quote, stuck my nose where it didn't belong, and that he was convicted on evidence that he didn't believe was very compelling.
Now, is it reopening the case? I mean, obviously he's quit, or the case doesn't go through. He thinks he's free and clear for 14 years.
Exactly.
And then you reopen the case. So obviously that's his ire against you.
Yes, correct. So we end up getting that information, and because the cellmate would have had to have been publicly identified, he's still in custody, and Bradford's serving a life sentence, and the crime happened outside of Los Angeles. The Department of Corrections never pursued any charges in the matter, and because Bradford's serving life, the idea with the brutal homicide that he's committed, and that he's now making arrangements to kill me and my family, it was pretty chilling. What he had said was he thought he was about to get out on a new trial motion, that he was going to do some things he always wanted to do. And then he had a to-do list. I was at the top of the list. He was going to shotgun blow my family's heads off in front of me so I could watch, and then he was going to kill me. So
had he already done a parole hearing when he supposedly confessed?
Oh, no, Mark. No, this happened back in 2002, right after.
Right after. Okay. So he's still pending sentencing or motion for new trial?
No, he's been sentenced, but he is basically at the Department of Corrections being evaluated to see where they're going to send him.
Okay. So he's there. So he's still got his appellate relief and writs are still all that. Got it. Yeah.
So what happens is fast forward in 2018, he has his first parole hearing. And I'm, of course, thinking, well, there's no way they're going to parole this guy. I mean, he made plans to brutally murder his wife. He made plans to kill me in prison. And he's done no programming while he's been there. He's done nothing. He hasn't admitted what he's done. So he gets the first parole hearing. He is deemed by the prison psychologist as a moderate risk. And one of the things they look at is they say, well, he's not doing anything in prison. He's not committing any bad acts in prison. But I mean, of course, by this time, he's in his mid-80s.
I was just going to say, how old is he at this point?
Yeah, he's like 85, and I guess they're expecting he's going to be maybe running drugs for MA. Of course he's not. Of course he's not doing anything. He's an old man, but very bitter. So he has the parole hearing, and at the parole hearing, all of a sudden he denies any memory of the murder at all. Then he says that, he thinks he's here because he killed somebody. And then finally ends up saying in the middle of the parole hearing, after refusing to talk about it with the psychologist, that, yeah, he killed his wife. But lucky for us, he was not angry at her. He was annoyed, but he was not angry. So I don't know. Again, like the Incredible Hulk, you don't want to see me when I get mad. I don't know what he's like when he gets mad, but he was pretty bad with this.
Does when he did the hearing in 2018, what was his medical condition?
Well, so it's interesting. The parole board has an incentive to get him out because he has some health issues.
Yeah,
so they want him out. So
they want everybody out of there because they've got a disproportionate aging prison population. So.
Right, and as you know, Mark, they're expensive.
Right. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of the budget that goes to the Department of Corrections that's for healthcare services.
Absolutely. So they want him out. Now, they basically tried to frame it as if he had mental issues, but there was nothing in the report to support it. And during the hearing, he's talking about every elementary school he attended. He's got a great memory, except for one thing he can't remember. Any guesses, guys?
Yeah, because he repressed it. The murder was very traumatic for him.
He just doesn't remember.
It was very traumatic.
Very traumatic. Got no memory of that. So anyway, despite this hearing where you're going, there's no way they're going to parole him, he gets paroled. So that's
in 2018?
That's in 2018.
Okay, but you had Newsom. He was going to showboat it and refuse.
No. That was the first one.
Was it still Jerry?
It was Jerry Brown on the first one.
Okay. And did Jerry immediately, for those who don't know, even if your parole hearing, and it's generally 2 or 3 people, even if they say we grant you parole, the governor is a backstop and has up to 120 days to reverse that decision. Then you can go to the Court of Appeal.
Right. So what happened was Governor Brown ended up, I did a lot of interviews. And Adam, I got to tell you, all the stuff that I did, the thing that people heard the most was your podcast.
Oh, really? Well, thank you.
Do you want to know something, John? I had a guy, I got him paroled. Brown reversed it. And I went on here and was lambasting Brown as an addled old man because he had promised me he wasn't going to do it. And I won't even say who it is because the guy's got a high governmental position now, called a friend of mine and said to stop having Mark talk on Adam's show. And so apparently Brown is an avid listener of Adam's show.
Clearly, I have heard that the show was listened to up there, and it made a difference. So, in any event,
I'm flattered. But hold on, if Gavin Newsom is listening right now, I would like him to just lock himself in the car and never come out. Please,
hey, John. So wait, what did you do? Did you talk to who was his then legal liaison person? Is that who you spoke to?
Well, I spoke to. I wrote letters. My boss at the time, Jackie Lacey, wrote letters. It was high mobilization. I went on did all kinds of media, and eventually, the governor issues a decision. But it's a very interesting decision. He never mentions the threats against me at all. So it was very clear that the fix was in, that they were going to delay it, and that the next year they were going to let him out. So unfortunately, the next year we have a second parole hearing. That parole hearing ends up taking place. Again, there's very little to argue that in any way Bradford has done anything differently. He still represents the same danger. But again, he's labeled a moderate risk. They have the parole hearing in June of 2019. It's only 18 months later. And again, the parole board says he's getting out, and I do everything all over again. And this time, I don't go on your show, Adam. This time I tried.
Really?
I called you up, but you guys, you didn't have time for me.
Well, Mike says Mike likes to let a little. He likes to let the guests breathe. You know, when I used to go on Letterman, my first appearance on Letterman was like 19 '99, and my second appearance was like 2007 or something like that. So, that's the way it works in Hollywood.
Well, I'm guessing probably, little did I know this would be a yearly thing for me, that, the parole hearings are every year. So you guys, I can't expect you to have it on every
recurring guest.
Well, let's jump to the present. So where are we now?
So we had a hearing January 6th. Because of the policy of my office, I had to take the day off. We are not allowed to appear at the hearings. We are not allowed to oppose the hearings. So on my own time, as a representative of the victim's family, they designated me. I participated in this hearing, took a day off from work.
Where is he housed?
Huh?
Where's he housed?
He's housed. That's a good question, Mark. He's housed at, I can't remember the facility, because, again, it's all Zoom.
Okay, because I was going to tell you, if it was, I've done them at San Quentin. It's beautiful as you're going in. It's the most, Adam and I often talk
best
about
real estate
best
in the
real
world.
estate in the world. But you do a parole hearing in a facility inside of there that you don't ever want to go inside.
Yeah, I've done him at the prison before. This was Zoom, and he's at a medical, in essence,
right,
because of his age. So. The parole board goes through how, in essence, everything that the governor wanted him to do, he hasn't done. He continues to deny any knowledge of why he did it, says that, he wasn't angry at her. When he asked if he has any regret, instead of saying, oh, yeah, I feel terrible, he says, well, I regret it because my children thought a lot of her. So not exactly overwhelming in his feelings about regret for killing his wife. Now, for whatever reason, the psychologist has now designated him a low risk from a moderate risk now. So again, pretty clear the fix is in, and they're going to let him out. And that's what they've done. So we do the whole hearing, and at the end of it, the parole board announces that they're going to grant him parole. Even though, and this was a quote, Bradford said, I don't know what I did, and it was spur of the moment. I didn't plan it. Even the parole board says this is pre-planned, showing callous disregard, motivated by anger. And they said that he had done limited and minimal programming even before he got old. So pretty much all the factors that you would think would keep him in. So basically, Adam, Mark, here's where we are right now. So in essence, what the parole board has decided to do is they've decided to play Russian roulette with my family. So they're going to go, you know what? He's an old guy. He probably won't do anything, so we'll just let him out. Now, keep in mind, and I discussed this, all you need to end up committing murder today, if you don't want to get away with it, and he's so old, he's not going to get away with it, but you need an Uber and a gun. So in 2019, a guy named Albert Flick, who was a 77-year-old guy, ended up in 2018, brutally murdering a woman who he had met after he had gotten released from prison, where he'd been in there decades for stabbing his wife 14 times in front of her daughter. He ends up killing this woman now, decades later, in front of her twin 11-year-olds. And at the time that he was released, the judge had said, you know what, he doesn't pose a threat anymore. In 2014, Stanwood Elkis was a 78-year-old guy who blamed some doctors at the VA from having
that story.
Yeah, you know that one. Yeah,
that was a crazy story. Do you remember that story?
I do remember.
Just went in and
remember.
Executed the doctors. Yeah,
well,
well,
and here's
I don't want to worry you that much more, but you don't need a gun and an Uber. You need $2,500 and a drift gun.
I was going to say, John, it's a lot easier. You don't have to do it yourself. I mean, there's we've got plenty of
homeless people who do anything for $3,000.
You know what the problem with that is, though?
What
is that there are an infinite amount of people out there that will agree to commit murder for you for money. But if you're an old person and not connected, they'll take your money all day, and they're not going to actually likely carry through with it. So Bradford's a do-it-yourself guy anyway. That's how he took care of his wife. But what's interesting about the case in Newport Beach is the guy literally had to be helped into the room by the nurse. He could hardly walk. So
No
when the
kidding.
doctor walked in,
I think I remember reading that.
Yeah, and then he executed
just executed him. So that's where we sit. I'm now in a situation where
the 120 days started running from the 6th.
Well, the way it works, Mark, is the parole board has 120 days to, in essence, certify the decision.
Right.
Then once it gets up to the governor, he's got, I believe, 30 days to give his decision. And and I will tell you that Governor Newsom was very responsive the last time and ended up reversing it. And the people that were up in his office were much more helpful than Governor Brown's people. So I'm just hoping that he's not going to be let go again. And then I can go through this again next year.
Well, the guy's how old? 85 now?
Now he is born in 1933, so I think he's 86 right now.
86. It's amazing.
I'm sorry, 87.
How old was Charlie Manson when he died? Wasn't he in his 80s?
He was in his 80s.
Too? Yeah. There's some longevity there.
Yeah. Well, it's that ocean air where it's right on the bay.
I'm watching John. What looks like he's on the beach there. Is that just a simulated beach scene, or are you in Hawaii?
I am not in Hawaii. That is a simulated beach scene.
I love it. It's very tranquil. I feel so relaxed just talking to you.
Manson was 83 when he passed away. So says Gary. John, Mark has a heart out, so all we can do is wish you well and get your story out there. And who should people, if people are going to try to contact somebody or the governor's office, is there a directive?
Well, I think if they contact the governor's office and the Department of Parole, either one, I think the governor's office is the most effective, and simply let them know. They can also contact any of their state legislators. This is a horrible act of domestic violence by a man who was not a youthful offender. He was in his mid-50s, ready to give everything up. He had $1 million retirement, and he was going to give it up because of his anger. Now he's 87 years old. He's got nothing to lose. So I can only hope that if they let him out, the only thing that will prevent him from doing something to me and my family is going to be a lack of desire to do so. That'll be it. And honestly, that's a gamble that not really interested in taking.
Will they share information? If he's paroled, will they tell you where he is? Will they tell you he's gone to this facility or he's gone to this apartment building? Like, will they give you the information about him so that you're able to protect yourself to some degree?
Well, so I had to actually ask for it. I had to make a request that he not be paroled in Los Angeles County. They were going to potentially parole him right here. They've recommended he's going to go to basically like a care home. So he won't even be in a locked facility.
Well, COVID will take care of him. They're not inoculating anybody in the care home. So assisted living, he's got more danger at the care home than he does at whatever prison he's in.
Mark, when he went away to prison, I remember telling his daughter, who the family's also terrified of him, that, you know what, guys like him will not last in prison. That's what I said in 2002.
It's amazing the resiliency of certain people when they get to prison. And it's also the reverse is true, too. You've probably seen it. The ones you think that would thrive in that environment are the ones who don't. I'd say it's very hard to predict the human nature of it.
Well, John Lewin, we wish you and your family Godspeed. I'm sorry you have to endure this.
John, good to see you after so many years, and stay safe.
You too, Mark. Maybe we'll get another case here.
I've got a couple pending, but until they do something with the criminal courts building, I'm not stepping inside that petri dish.
Thanks, John.
Thanks again, guys.
See ya.
All right, let me hit Geico here. Do you rent your home? Well, I bet you do one or the other. And Geico's going to make it easy to bundle. Take your homeowner's insurance, your renter's insurance, or your automotive insurance and put it all together at Geico. Go to geico.com. Get a quote. See just how much you could save. It's so easy at Geico.com. When you bundle at Geico.com. Mark, I know you got a heart out. We went longer with John.
We went longer with John, but you know what? I meant if I didn't have the heart out, I probably would have gone down this road. You know, in domestic situations, it's unusual that he got a life back then. I mean, because back then,
crimes of passion.
Yeah, that's generally has a second or voluntary written all over
the
it.
The craziest one ever is Dominique Dunn.
Right.
And her boyfriend literally choked her in a driveway, just choked her to death. He was in for like 37 months or something.
I was going to say that was back under, a different sentencing scheme in the state of California. And you're right, he did not do double digits. I mean, it was single digits.
He was in for like under 5 years.
Yeah, it was for... And that changed as obviously it would any parent, it changed the trajectory of Dunn's life.
She was like 19 years old.
Yeah,
he just went over there. And
he was a young chef. You hear that, Jake?
Right. And literally killed her with his hands.
He was sentenced to 6.5 years, 6 for the murder and another 6 months for an assault. But he served only 3 years, 7 months, and 27 days.
Yeah, because there was probably no weapon, right? Because the laws have changed now that if you use a weapon, the enhancements from the weapons are astronomical. But also, what year was that, Gary? Was that 70-something? 82.
Well, first off, how do you get the initial 6 years? You went over to your girlfriend's house and killed her.
Well, because that back then, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, that would have been a classic voluntary. It would have been, they would have said the heat of passion.
Correct.
Would negate the malice. Is that what he got convicted of?
That was correct. He was not convicted of second-degree murder, but found guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
I tried so many murder cases back in the 80s and the 90s.
I thought involuntary manslaughter was backing over the neighbors.
No,
when you were drunk.
Voluntary.
Oh, voluntary.
Yeah.
Sorry. But he's out in under 4 years, and he takes the life of an 18-year-old girl in broad daylight with his hands.
It's a completely different era, culture, and everything else. Completely different.
All right. Well, we'll promise to get into...
We said we get a little into...
All right, you want to get a little... I'm worried about you and your heart out.
Okay. That's sweet of you. Thank you, Adam.
Well, Mark's a busy man with much to do and many to sue.
I'm trying to get California. Wait, that's going to be my new. I'm going to put that on a sweatshirt. Much to do and plenty to sue. I'm trying to get California recalibrated here, and so we filed yesterday the amended complaint, as I said, and I hope to be in court next week on a restraining order, but. Enough of that. Let's talk about impeachment for a second. As I was driving over here, not only, as everybody knows, the House has already impeached Trump, and he's now the second president. They're supposedly sending the articles of impeachment over to the Senate on Monday, which will then trigger the trial in the case in the Senate. And supposedly, I'm sure they'll figure it out over the weekend when this drops. Schumer and McConnell are trying to negotiate what that's going to look like. So now there's two facets to this. In order to convict, they've got to have 16 or 17, depending on how you calculate it, probably 17 Republicans vote to convict. If they convict, then they can go to a second phase to, by majority vote that he can never serve office again. What's your prediction?
Oh, as far as the Republicans go?
Yeah, you think they get 17? Back of the hand, I think they could get more, although, Liz Cheney in the House is getting excoriated for her public statements so far.
It kind of depends. So there's two schools of thought when it comes to Republicans. I think everyone is fear-based, and that's the first school of thought.
Right.
Let's get as much daylight between this guy with the lowest approval ratings ever on his way out and me as a politician. We're already in the same party. That's bad enough. But let's get some real distance between this guy.
And by the way, you're absolutely right, because this is to some degree political theater, as Alan Dershowitz said. So you have to you cannot analyze this, by the way, as anybody. I mean, we could talk about the issues. Can you try somebody who's out of office? Blah, 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 blah. This is all politics.
This is all window dressing. There's no justice going to be brought this way or that way. No. So
that would be, for those who don't understand what we're saying, you want justice, that's a criminal proceeding or a civil proceeding. It's not going to happen in the Senate.
So there's one school of thought, which is if you're a Republican, you want to get as much distance as you can and be on record as saying I voted against this guy. On the other hand, he got 74 million votes. So you are jeopardizing yourself because those people aren't going away. And when they find out you're Benedict Arnold and voted against or to impeach the guy who they voted for, then maybe that's some jeopardy. I think
the jeopardy, I think, is what they've already talked about. And the reason I brought up Liz Cheney, even though she's in the House, not in the Senate, her blowback is they're going to primary her. I mean, that's the, and so if it's amazing. You could always predict, with the exception of Mitt Romney and to some degree Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, who was going to say something in real time, depending on whether they were running for re-election soon or not, and whether or not they were like Romney in Utah, which is famously not pro-Trump.
Right. So I really don't know enough to give an informed prediction / opinion. I do say that the man got 74 million plus votes. So if your plan is to distance yourself from the guy who got half the country to vote for him, or almost half the country to vote for him, you have to think about that strategy if you're a Republican.
And I'm wondering if the guy who is the most politically diabolical is Mitch McConnell. I mean, he's so calculating. He's so he kind of sees around corners politically. I mean, for you can disagree with him, but that has to be a observation of him. He gets certain things, and if he's trying to steer the Republican Party away from Trump, deprogram would be his thought, and he's already come out and made a couple of pronouncements that have provoked the ire of people who are Trump supporters. I think it's going to come down to whether he wants to engineer it or not, because I think he could engineer it.
All right. Well, we'll keep you guys posted on this, and the next show also the school closures, which is something
we never even got to the school closures, and I wanted to too, because there's been enormous pushback on his. He had the largesse of that, way too much of they underestimated what the budget was going to come in at. And
we're talking about Newsom. Yeah. Well, it's the outdoor dining thing is exactly like school closures. There is no data to suggest that schools should be closed, and then there's data that is causing more harm than good.
I was texting with Drew. Drew's told you, right? He says he's never seen in his career the mental health issues from teenagers that he's seen right now.
Yes, and I mean, we're going on a year if you're out here in Los Angeles. My kids have been flopped out for coming on to a year. So, and I wonder what the plan is, and I wonder if there's a potential lawsuit there.
There is. I mean, the problem is, we'll tease it for next week.
All right. By the way, February 26th, 27th, Oklahoma City, Bricktown Comedy Club, and then March in 25th, Kansas City, Arvesta Theater, and then Royal Oak, Michigan, which is a nice theater. I played there a few times. March 26th, Royal Oak Music Theater. And then May 6th, Waukegan, Illinois, Genesee Theater. Look at those dates, Mark. Study them closely.
I am studying them closely.
Mike August is going to be hitting you up.
Exactly.
We had a layover on our way to Naples. Can I tell you, a week ago today, Mark, I got up at 4 a.m. I met I met Mike at LAX. Mike and Chris are like at 5 a.m. We had a 6 a.m. flight. At about 1 o'clock, we're sitting at a bar in Dallas, Fort Worth. Not even halfway to Naples at this point.
Where do you're not doing anything until next weekend, right?
I'm not doing anything till February 26th, 27th.
I ought to coordinate. I had to coordinate with August. This gives me an idea. We had a book depending on my court schedule.
All right, what plugs do you have, Mark?
I don't have any plugs because California is completely shut down. So I've got, in New York, we've got go to Prova at Grand Central Station, Grand Central Terminal, and Moxie Hotel. We've got Prova there in New York Times Square.
And Mark, can I just say congratulations on the new addition to the Garrigus Hospitality portfolio?
Oh yes, we just closed on what many people know as the Ms. Maisel Resort in the Catskills, 1,000 acres up there, which we're about to refurbish and turn into a destination and maybe a Carolla.
Hey, 1,000 acres, there. You can do a socially distanced show, no problem.
Exactly right.
Me and Dave
and it's
Chappelle.
got a bowling alley. Yeah, Dave could be there.
So,
until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Mark Garrigus saying mahala.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.